Hello, welcome. Welcome to this pre-event on UN system work on STI for the SDGs, including outcomes of regional STI forums and global thematic conferences. I'm Stephanie Rambler from UNDESA. I just have a couple of housekeeping announcements. This is a Zoom webinar, so your microphones and cameras will be disabled in terms of participants. But we do want to hear from you, so please use the Zoom chat box to submit any questions and comments to the panelists. You will see that if you connected through Whova, you'll see there is also a Whova chat box. Please do not use that one. Use the Zoom chat box, and that will be easier for our moderator to access. With that, I'm happy to introduce our moderator for this session, Dr. Salome Gucu, PhD, Principal Innovation and Outreach Officer for the Inter-University Council for East Africa. Dr. Gucu, over to you.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Stephanie, and welcome all team members. I'm sure for this session, most of you, it's sharing and highlighting the contribution and actually on the work of UN system on STI for the SDGs. And even as we share, probably it's also time to really ask ourselves the key questions. And these among them will be, are we doing enough on STI for SDGs as part that is on our individual institutions? And also another thing probably we reflect on, even as we share the good things that we've been doing, is what are the take-home best practices in the UN system work for STI and SDGs that each institution can learn from each other, as also we share with the rest of the world. Another issue that probably it's a food for thought for us is it impactful, whatever we are doing? Would we really be proud that what we are doing on STI for SDGs is impacting the group? And then finally, from my input is what can we do better? Because of course, there is always room for improvement in everything that we do. There is room for improvement, and probably that would be my initial introduction points for this session. And I think, Stephanie, is it time now to call upon the speakers for the proceed?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, and with that, let me call upon the first presenter for this session. And this is Dr. Shamira of Unesco. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Salome, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and good day to you. Good morning, good evening. It's really a great pleasure for me to address you today on this occasion of the 7th STI Forum and present to UNESCO's roles and actions in promoting STI as part of the global agenda. I'd like to go to the next slide, please. Thank you. The next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, while they're finding the slides, let me say at the outset how much we appreciate at UNESCO and our sincere and warm gratitude to all of the organizers, the UN 10 member group experts, and especially UNDESA, UNIATT, for the dedication in bringing us together and the UN family and multi-stakeholders from all over the world to leverage science, technology, and innovation for sustainable development. And I want to start with this particular slide. UNESCO is celebrating more than 75 years of its existence, and the S in UNESCO was put there after the Second World War, because we believe that a vision of a world at peace could not be a world without science. And I would like to give you an aperture, a small overview of some of the programs we are implementing to promote science for peace. On the next slide, please. Thank you. So UNESCO's support to member states in STI is really multifold. And I would like to say here that within the work stream on STI for SDGs, UNESCO is supporting the implementation of the global pilot program on STI for SDGs. And these were also launched in July 2019 at the high-level political Forum. We're in the process of concluding the pilot phase of roadmaps in 6 countries, Ethiopia, Ghana, India, Kenya, Serbia, and Ukraine. But I'd like to say that we can do much more. So what is UNESCO's functions in contributing to the STI for SDGs? Firstly, we are a laboratory of ideas, generating innovative proposals to advance science, technology, and innovation. But we also a clearinghouse function through policy advice and policy analysis, monitoring, benchmarking, statistics, and data collection from all of our 193 member states. But we're a standard setter. And I'm very pleased to show to you on the right side of this slide the recommendation on science and scientific researchers adopted by the General Assembly of UNESCO 2017. And we have the UNESCO recommendation on open science, the first ever recommendation promoting scientific sharing of knowledge and information beyond borders and beyond paywalls. And this is the first ever recommendation on open science, opening science up to societies, sharing scientific knowledge in the spirit of Article 27 of the Declaration on Human Rights. But we had another very exceptional recommendation from our General Assembly last year, that is the ethics of artificial intelligence. So we're really a standard setter for the United Nations for science, but we also a catalyst and a motor for international cooperation. And every 5 years, we produce the UNESCO Science Report. And this science report monitors science policies across the world and how science is really contributing to the SDGs in all its form. And it also highlights cooperation. And last year, the theme was very critical. It's called the Race Against Time for Smarter Development. But we also, not only capacity builder, catalyst for international cooperation, but we are promoting the role for women in science. And we have numerous prizes at UNESCO that showcase exceptional women scientists across the world. Next slide, please. Thank you. So how do we do this mandate of UNESCO since 1945? Well, through our intergovernmental scientific programs. We have the Intergovernmental Hydrological Program promoting access to water. And we're now in the 9th phase. On the bottom of the slide, you will see the title, Science for Water Secure World in a Changing Environment. We have the exceptional international geoscience, geoparks programs, valorizing the earth sciences. We're the only organization in the United Nations to valorize and to build capacity in monitoring our geological heritage, earth sciences. We have large programs in local indigenous knowledge systems, the World Water Assessment Program, which I will come back to you on another slide. But we also have an extensive international basic science program and biodiversity programs. Now, we monitor these also through exceptional programs of UNESCO, developed since the late 1940s, and these are through our designated sites. We also have a wealth of institutes, centers, programs, and networks. So we have some, we also have UNESCO chairs, and we have over 80 specialized centers in science. Now I want to just show you on this slide is called Engineering for Sustainable Development. I've just come out of another STI Forum debate where we have launched a new report called Engineering Resilience in Disaster Risk Management for Sustainable Development with the World Federation of Engineering Organizations, which groups some 500,000 engineers across the world. Next slide, please. I want to briefly go over science to the service of SDGs and humanity. We are at the crisis of water management in the world and access to water to achieve water security. Water is a connector, every drop counts. And you can see water is central to all of the SDGs. So what is the UN doing about this? Next slide, please. The UN has launched what is called the SDG 6 Global Accelerator Framework. 2.2 billion people still lack safely managed drinking water. And the pandemic has really urged us to accelerate SDG 6 because it's alarmingly off track. So the UN has launched the Accelerator Framework. The UN has also launched the Water Climate Coalition for SDG 6. Under this Accelerator Framework, there are a number of different areas for cooperation, such as good governance, innovation, data innovation, and financing. But we, UNESCO and UNDESA, are providing significant contribution, and we are assigned a role in capacity development. And we look forward to working with UNDESA on this launched SDG 6 Global Accelerator Framework. So how will we work with UNDESA? What does UNESCO offer in terms of hydrological sciences to the world? On the next slide, please. You will see the Intergovernmental Hydrological Program established in 1965. Actually, the program on water governance was already established in the 1950s. The aim of this intergovernmental hydrological program, the only one in the UN, is to mobilize scientific expertise to improve knowledge and innovation to address water security challenges through science, technology, innovation, to strengthen the science policy interface for national, regional decision-making, but to facilitate education, capacity building, to enhance water resources management. And here we're looking to a holistic, integrated water resources management by access to the hydrological sciences. And that is why open science is so important for us here today. Next slide, please. In terms of the UNESCO water family and the hydrological sciences, what we can offer in terms of STI for the SDGs, we have specialized centers, 36 functioning centers, 169 committees, IHP committees in 169 countries, 66 UNESCO chairs, and we have the unusual water assessment program. What is this water assessment program? This water assessment program produces the World Water Development Report. On the right side, you will see an annual report produced on behalf of the 32 UN water family on specific themes. And this year, the theme is groundwater, making the invisible visible. So maybe you'd want to ask, why groundwater? Next slide, please. Well, if one has to look at groundwater today, it actually accounts for 99% of all liquid fresh water on Earth. Recently, we launched this unusual report of groundwater, making the invisible visible, at the World Water Forum in Dakar. And the reason for this is that this could be a remedy for the water crisis. It's really critical that we produce science and observation, hydrological sciences, in order to untap this groundwater, because an estimated 4 billion people live in areas that suffer from severe physical water security. And we believe that groundwater holds a solution. It's really the remedy under our feet, but it's a resource undervalued, mismanaged, and even abused. So through our programs, we have now set the deadline for groundwater, making the invisible visible, and you're all invited to the Groundwater Summit, the first ever to be held in UNESCO in December this year, as a build-up to the UN Water Conference 2023 in New York next year. Next slide, please. Now, the other program we have is the Ecological and Earth Sciences program. Built up over 60 years ago, UNESCO has a unique network of designated sites, promoting the applications of science, technology, and innovation to manage properly, correctly, through the sciences, our environment that is above and below the Earth. We have over 2,000 sites. The World Heritage Sites are really natural heritage sites. They are based on scientific assessment of the natural heritage. And we have 183 global geoparks. These are sites of exceptional geological value and valorizing our geological heritage. We have 727 biosphere reserves in 131 countries. And here we see the scientific monitoring of the environment, of the biodiversity, where people live in nature through science and technology. They're able to monitor the resources provided by the environment and actually live off the environment. So the economic value of the environment is really taken into account in all of these biosphere reserves, which is unusual. Promoting the living with harmony in nature based on science, technology, and innovation for the SDGs is really the spirit of the biosphere reserves of UNESCO, because the economic dependence of the communities are really integrated to the biosphere reserves, and some 275 million people call biosphere reserves their home. This covers 6% of the Earth's population, of the total Earth area. Next slide, please. So UNESCO within the UN, we have the UN Decade of Ocean Science coordinated by the UNESCO Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission. We are contributing to a number of UN policy forums, as indicated here on the right-hand side, and we are a member of these, but also we cooperate extensively with the UN. I'd like to make these programs accessible to all the rest of the UN family, but we also host 2 UN IATT work streams, the STI for Sdg Roadmaps, capacity building in STI, and we look forward to working with you and all the member states and partners online and on call. And I want to sincerely thank once again UN IATT and especially UNDESA for this exceptional partnership. Thank you very much. I hope I was fast enough in time.
Good. Thank you, Dr. Shamira. I think I believe you are within time. And without wasting any time, question and answer will come later. So we call upon the next presenter, and that is Dr. Isma Hao from FAO.
Hi, Salome. Good afternoon, good morning, colleagues. Let me put up my slides and let me know once you see them. And thank you very much for Shamila for a great presentation. I felt very much drawn by the subject on water and on many other things, biodiversity and others. So let me share with you a little bit how FAO work on STI is really supporting the SDGs. And it's really a pleasure to be with you here today. Thank you very much for you and Dessa and the colleague. I would mostly talk about our new science and innovation strategy, but also highlight some of the other initiatives that FAO is engaged in, and all of which are really very much connected to the global development agenda and achieving the SDGs. As we all know, and I think Shamila clarified it as well very clear, science, technology, and innovation are at the heart of the 2030 agenda, and it is part and parcel of many SDGs. In 2021, the UN Food Systems Summit affirmed again the need to invest more in science and innovation for the SDGs and for the global development agenda. So I think we all agree that science, technology, and innovation are central to achieve an inclusive, efficient, resilient, and sustainable agri-food systems. So let me share with you here how we see science and innovation at FAO. So for us, this is really this graph. It's a representation of our new strategic framework for the next decade, covering 22 to 31. And science and innovation, it's in all of it. So we have what we call 4 programs, and those programs are to transform our agri-food system in order to have a better production, have a better nutrition, a better environment, and a better life, leaving no one behind. And to get to those 4 betters, what we are using is accelerators. So the accelerators are technology, innovation, data, and complements. And in the complement, there we have the governance, we have the human capital, we have the institutions. And if we think about it, really, science underpins all the 4 accelerators, not only technology, innovation, and data, but also in the complement per se. And science, again, underpins the cross-cutting themes, the gender, the youth, the inclusion. So differently, science and innovation, it's part and parcel of everything we do at FAO. And as UNESCO, we are about 76 years, and we are a technical organization that really use science and technology and innovation for all its programs. The good news is that we are developing our first ever science and innovation technology. So what we did actually, once we have the strategic framework that was approved by the governing bodies, we thought really if we're going to put in place this strategic framework, we need the science and innovation strategy. And that science and innovation strategy vision of the strategy is a world free from hunger and malnutrition, where the potential of science and innovation is fully leveraged to overcome complex social, economic, and environmental challenges of agri-food system in a global, equitable, inclusive, and sustainable manner. And the goal of our strategy, it's very much working on the ground with the member state. So we need really to engage and empower the 194 members of FAO to really harness science and innovation to realize a context-specific and systemic solution so that we really transform our agri-food system to become more efficient, more inclusive, more resilient, and more sustainable through the 4 better that I mentioned earlier, and that's with particularly leaving no one behind. And I forgot to mention that, of course, we have a number of SDGs that are really very much connected to the mandate of FAO, but the 3 most SDGs that we are working towards is SDG 2, zero hunger, SDG 1, no poverty, but also the SDG 10, which is reducing inequalities. And in our strategy, science and innovation strategy, we have three main pillars. The first pillar is to strengthen science and evidence-based decision-making at all levels, both national, regional, and global. The second one is supporting innovation and technology, particularly at the regional and the country level. And the third one, it's really serving our members better by reinforcing our own capacity in terms of science and technology. And we have two cross-cutting pillars, which are transformative partnership and innovative funding and financing. And maybe here, what I would want to share with you is that when we talk about innovation, it's really a broader sense of innovation. It's not only technological innovation, which is part of it, it's digital. Many people take digital innovation as standalone. Digital, it's part and parcel of the technological innovation, but we want to look also at policy innovation, social innovation, financial innovation, and institutional innovation. When you change institutions, sometimes you could do great things. So let me move to some examples of new programs that we are really putting in place with science and technology and innovation as a driver. FAO is developing a new program on marginal environments. And marginal environment, let me define it by physical marginalities, whereby you got very dry areas, you get very wet areas, mountainous, in a nutshell, non-arable land, very, very difficult environment to produce in, and combined with social marginality, which is poverty. And the idea is really to harness science and innovation to make those marginal environments productive and make them more resilient. The program is to promote an integrated science-based and innovation action for protecting the natural resources, and most importantly, reversing the degradation that lead to improved agricultural productivity and better livelihood for those people that are trapped in poverty. When you think about it, I always say, if you are in an arable land, it doesn't matter where you are well off. But when you are a farmer, a producer in a marginal environment, and you are in a least income country, and many times ever in middle income country, most probably you are locked and you are trapped in that poverty. So the idea is really to look at science and technology and innovation, bring it to those marginal environments to improve their life and their livelihood. And the expected result cut across reducing vulnerability to stress and shock, improve access to innovation and technology, strengthen science policy interface to really push for development in those marginal environments, and enhance capacity of agri-food innovation system in those marginal environments. Another event or initiative that I want to really share with you, it's the Science and Innovation Days that we are planning the first week of October. And this is as a follow-up to last year. We did the Science Days with the UN Food Systems Summit Scientific Committee, and we wanted to really put and highlight on science and innovation, as we are all agreeing that we need really to transform our agri-food system, not only for people's sake, but also for the planet's sake, but also for really cutting, again, SDG 1, SDG 2, and many other SDGs. And the idea is really to share robust science and evidence-based options, assist members in making informed decisions, and explore what can the technology do for us, technology and innovation at large, taking in consideration that we are talking about a broad perspective of innovation, and tackle also science communication, which is lagging behind, and we saw it clearly in the COVID crisis. Another initiative that we are starting as part and parcel of our strategy, it's developing an agri-food system technologies and innovation outlook. ATU, we call it ATU. ATU is proposed to be an open access knowledge product that offers an end-to-end life cycle coverage from the inputs into research and development through the pre-emergent and the emergent phases, which often takes more than a decade, to the diffusion and the impact of mature agri-food system, science, technology, and innovation. An ATU would build, but also will differ from the existing sources, since it would focus more tightly on the agri-food system than the current OECD, Unesco, or WIPO product do. We have identified 4 distinct stages of the STI development and diffusion. We divide them in 4 life cycle. In the life cycle, we divide them in 4 key stages. So we have the STI input, we have the pre-emergent STI, we have the emergent STI, and then the 4th one is the mature STI. Each of these demands distinctive data collection, analysis, and curation methods. An explicit goal of the ATU is really to help foster much more South-South collaboration around monitoring the development, adoption, adaptation, and impact of the agri-food system STI throughout the world, but specifically focusing on the least and middle income countries. Each ATU edition is expected to be developed over 2 years, but also we are thinking that after we have enough data, hopefully we can go into an annual frequency. Open access data portal would be developed and updated for more regularly, multiple times each year. And we hope really that to have the precursor of ATU that we're going to be launched in October during the Science and Innovation Days. So the ATU in a nutshell, if I want to say it, it's really to understand what's happening in the South, why technology and innovation is adopted and scaled or not, and it's what framework or what really inducive environment we should create to push for innovation in the agri-food system in the global South particularly. Another area that I want to share with you as we are talking about science communication, and I'm very glad that I came after Shamila, that shows us a lot of interesting subject that UNESCO is tackling. FAO is strengthening its position as a source of reliable scientific information and a neutral platform at the heart of important debate, engaging on issues that are contentious and have presented communication challenges is imperative. We cannot shy away from saying what we know and what we don't know. As a first step, we have commissioned an issue paper on gene editing technologies for agri-food system. It focuses on the potential benefits, but also on the risks and unintended consequences, as well as the barrier for adoption and diffusion, implication for small-scale producers, and the commensurate regulatory, ethical, and policy issues. The proposed issue paper on gene editing is intended to be science and evidence-based and forward-looking, drawing on current information and the plurality of science, methods, and analytical scale. It is not about FAO taking a for or against position. Rather, FAO has a role in providing robust science and evidence and convening the global community for constructive dialogue and exchange of knowledge. And the idea is we do a series of those papers, reference papers, that allows decision makers to understand what's happening and level the difference between global South and North. We have really the South more than ever requires those information around those new technologies so that they can either use it or not use it, but knowing exactly what they are missing or what they are about to use. The other component that I want to share with you, it's really the role of foresight at large. And within that, FAO is undertaking a foresight study on emerging technologies and innovation in the agri-food system in order to support FAO playing a lead role in engaging in strategic participatory foresight. The study will be looking mostly at what breakthroughs in technologies and innovation are expected in the next 10 to 30 years. What would be the context-specific impact of these disruptive technologies or innovation? How can foresight enable identification of synergies and trade-offs? And what is the role of foresight in informing policymakers to better anticipate investment needs and guiding future policies? And again, here, the idea is to level really the South with the North. The North is already doing a lot of that. But really the South requires really to be ready for the new technologies that are coming in the next 10 to 30 years. And by saying being ready for it, it's investing in it, but also having the right policies, the right regulation, the right investment, the right partners. So this is another initiative that we want to really make sure that we are providing the South with the know-how and the information that they need to really use science and technology and innovation in the right way. There are a number of many other initiatives that are really that we are starting or have been going on for a few years to really push for more science, technology, and innovation in the agri-food system. Just to cite some of them, we have the Digital Village Initiative, the 1,000 Digital Villages Initiative, which is an integrated development vision that enshrines digitalization at the core of rural transformation and rural prosperity. There is another initiative on the International Platform for Digital Food and Agriculture that aims at providing an inclusive multi-stakeholder forum to promote dialogue on the digitalization, again, particularly looking at villages or rural areas. We have an initiative that we call Hand in Hand, that is country-led and that is evidence-based, country-owned initiative to accelerate agricultural transformation and sustainable rural development to eradicate poverty and end hunger using really big data and analysis, and it's supported by a geospatial platform. And we have also the Global Action on One Country, One Priority Product, which is an initiative that aims to boost the value chain of special agricultural products to ensure that food security, improve nutrition, increase income, and preserve the environment. And the idea is that really within countries, or at least region, we need to develop the full value chain to gain efficiencies in terms of movement of good across the globe. And to end, I'm gonna just leave you with some key messages that I wanna share with you. I think the landscape of science and innovation is continuously evolving, both within and beyond the agri-food system. And we have to recognize that over the last 10 to 15 years, many areas and disciplines have flourished, from OMIC technologies to AI, to big data, to nanotechnology, you name it. So we are at our best time really to use science, technology, and innovation. And STI is a foundation for us at FAO for our strategic framework, but also for the global development agenda. And our first ever science and innovation strategy for us, it's really a tool. Many times I say, if you don't use science, it's like if you are not using a phone these days. So it's very important for us to use the tools of science, technology, and innovation to put in place our strategic framework, which has the 4 better. And we hope really that we get to those aspirational 4 better for everybody, leaving no one behind. And there was a number of recent initiatives that really demonstrate how FAO commitment to strengthen its leadership and role on science and innovation for the transformation of our agri-food system in a way that it's better for people and planet and prosperity. Thank you very much, and over to you. And let me stop sharing my screen. Over to you, Salome. Thank you.
Thank you, Smahe. We see actually areas from water to food systems, ensuring food security, using innovation as driver to ensure that the globe is well fed. And so we proceed now to the next presenter, and I call upon Ms. Maria from DESA.
Hello, and thank you, Salome. I'm very pleased to be here. Excellencies, my dear colleagues, Dr. Shamila Nair-Bedul of Unesco, Mr. Niklas Edman of UNOSA, Dr. Ismahane Elouafi of FAO, and Mr. Kaveh Zahedi of ESCAP, and you, our moderator, Salome Gucu. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. And I'm really happy to be here at this pre-event, which kicks off 2 days of the Science, Technology and Innovation Forum. This morning session provides a valuable opportunity to look back over the past year and spend some time taking stock of the UN work advancing science, technology and innovations for the SDGs. As you heard from the first 2 presenters in the specific fields, and you will hear more later. There are a lot of initiatives that the UN system is producing. We in DESA are a little bit more at the analytical and horizontal level, that we work with all the colleagues and many others, of course, to produce a coherent view for SDGs, STI for SDGs. So let me say, here we are at the half point of the 2030 agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. And as we all know, our attention must be on accelerating implementation. If we are to have any hope of achieving the SDGs by 2030, we need to be using every tool at our disposal to make the needed transformation towards sustainability. When member states agreed on the 2030 agenda, they recognized that science, technology, and innovation are among the most essential tools that we have. And indeed, they agreed on strengthening the science policy interface, investing in technology, building capacity for STI in all regions and among all groups and communities. And most importantly, they created the Technology Facilitation Mechanism, or TFM. The TFM is made up of several elements. First, there is the interagency task team, which is represented in this panel today. Then there is the 10-member group on STI for SDG, of which our moderator is a member. Then an online platform, which is now known as the 2030 Connect, and finally the STI Forum itself. And in some ways, the TFM, the Technology Facilitation Mechanism, serves as the anchor of STI for SDGs work across the UN system. To further bolster the UN commitment to STI for SDGs, Secretary General Antonio Guterres has also made the issue of digital technologies a priority. And you just learned how many applications there are, how many ways to use these tools there are. From the Secretary General high-level panel on digital cooperation, through his roadmap for digital cooperation, and now his common agenda, the UN is committed to bringing the international community better together to harness the benefits of technology while mitigating its risks and challenges. In my separate capacity as acting envoy on technology, I am really pleased to have worked with many partners to push this agenda forward, including through our multi-stakeholders roundtables on key issues such as global connectivity, digital capacity building, artificial intelligence, and digital public goods, many issues which are also being discussed by the STI Forum. And indeed, to help promote strong interagency collaboration as part of TFM Interagency Task Force work, my office and DESA have jointly undertaken and completed a mapping of UN initiatives, mechanisms, and programs on digital technologies. And I will be presenting the outcomes of this mapping in a side event tomorrow, 6th of May, 7:30 a.m. in New York time. So in addition, the Office of the Tech Envoy is now working with UN partner agencies to prepare for the Global Digital Compact, which the Secretary General has proposed as a key outcome for next year's Summit of the Future. And we will shortly be launching a public space on the Office website, a survey to collect inputs and views to inform the preparation of this compact. Now, let me focus back on DESA. The Department of Economic and Social Affairs plays a leading role in promoting STI for the SDGs. The areas of DESA's engagement are as diverse as the DESA divisions themselves. They include initiatives promoting data management and e-governance, STI in the forest sector, STI for social inclusion and youth employment and development, and STI to advance the just transition towards better sustainability. Publications, policy briefs address other topics as well, including information and analysis on fintech, technology for statistics and big data, artificial intelligence, frontier technologies, and much more. So to advance the science policy interface, member states have called for a Global Sustainable Development Report, or GSDR, authored by an independent group of scientists appointed by the Secretary General. DESA serves as the secretariat for this group, working in close collaboration with a UN task team that includes many agencies, that is UNCTAD, UNDP, UNEP, UNESCO, and the World Bank. And the first quadriennial report was launched in 2019, and the next one will be released in 2023. As is the case for this GSDR, collaborating with UN system partners is the standard operating procedure for much of DESA's work on STI. For instance, we also partnered with the Office of Information and Communication Technology, the OICT, to create the 2030 Connect platform, online platform, and that works as a one-stop shop for policymakers, practitioners, students, members of civil society, and any stakeholder who seeks to tap into the expertise and networks of the UN system and its partners. Another example is the STI for Sdg Roadmaps Initiative. It aims to provide governments with guidance for shaping STI policy frameworks and strategies for the SDGs. And in this regard, we work with diverse partners, including the European Commission, UNESCO, again, the World Bank, UNCTAD, UNIDO, UNESCAP, or other regional Economic Commission, ESCWA, and the ECA, and also UNDP, FAO, and UNITAR. The interagency task team I mentioned provides the ideal platform for such working level cooperation. Of course, the STI Forum itself is successful thanks to teamwork and the collaboration with this interagency task team, the 10-member group, and many other partners. Over the last 7 years, the Multi-Stakeholder Forum has become the global platform for showcasing the STI work of the UN system and beyond, and for providing an institutional link to the high-level political forum on sustainable development and many other SDG implementation efforts of the UN system. In that spirit of partnership and collaboration, I really encourage all of you to get involved in the TFM work. And I will close now and look forward to hearing more from my colleagues, from the other organizations, from the audience who's tuning in from around the world. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Maria. There we get to hear about coordination, data, digital technology, and that is all getting together within the UN system. So we look now to the next presenter, and that is Nicholas from UNOSA. Welcome.
Thank you, welcome. And indeed, it is my pleasure to take part in this important dialogue. And I will try over the next 10 minutes to give you a brief orientation on the role of the Office for Outer Space Affairs in what we are discussing here. Next slide, please. Next slide. So I can then just start talking while the slide is being uploaded. On the next slide, I have given a snapshot of the topics of the agenda of the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space and its two subcommittees, the Scientific and Technical Subcommittee and Legal Subcommittee. It is important to note that the Office for Outer Space Affairs is closely connected to our intergovernmental platform. COPUS has 100 states members currently, ranging from all the major spacefaring nations, space middle powers, emerging space nations, and even countries that do not perform any space activities, but nevertheless, they are space-using stakeholders. The committee deals with quite a broad agenda and with an inherent diversity. There are, on the one hand, the way that we in the space community, from governmental side, intergovernmental organizations, and non-governmental organizations, and also private sector, looking into how we are using space assets in orbit and how we are supporting the more efficient use of space science and technology for sustainable development on planet Earth. And here we have items such as, here we go, space and climate change, space and global health, disaster management, space and water. So those are really the core agenda items of this intergovernmental body, where member states predominantly are looking into how we are using our assets in orbit for the betterment of planet Earth. Then there is a specific consideration in this intergovernmental body on the safety of space operations. And that is, of course, natural, because this is really an intergovernmental body focusing directly on civilian space cooperation, the peaceful uses of outer space, namely, and international cooperation in that regard, and how to build up national capacities in using space science and technology. And there are challenges, there are hazards to the safety of space operations, predominantly from space debris, but also space weather, which is really the interaction between the sun and activities in orbit, activities in aviation, and also on ground infrastructures. And there are also hazards that are non-man-made. And here we go with the NEO, which is an acronym that stands for Near Earth Objects, namely planetary defense, incoming asteroids and comets that might impact on planet Earth. And lastly, what I wanted to say here, which is also important here, is that since this intergovernmental body is the creator of international space law, the 5 UN treaties have been developed within this intergovernmental body, which was founded in 1959 under the General Assembly. There are a lot of focus on normative framework of space activities, on governance. And the latest, I would say latest and maybe most exciting topic for member states to really discuss now, when there is a lot of political issues there, is surrounding the exploration, exploitation, and utilization of natural resources on the moon and other celestial bodies. So it's important to keep that in mind when we now look into what the Office for Outer Space Affairs is doing. Next slide. So the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space last year finalized a 4-year development on what it calls the Space 2030 Agenda, which was adopted by the General Assembly plenary last year. This is a policy-oriented agenda which really goes to the heart of space governance and really looking into what states are doing at the national level and how they are cooperating internationally surrounding space economy, space society, space accessibility, and of course, lastly, space diplomacy at the global level, predominantly within the framework of the committee. And this agenda is really important for this intergovernmental body, where it also outlines the relationship between, on the one hand, the intergovernmental body and its secretariat, the Office for Outer Space Affairs, where we are also heavily involved in capacity building in all the range of science, technology, law, and policy. Next slide, please. So, as I said, the Office for Outer Space Affairs, the predominant role of the office is to act as the secretariat, substantive secretariat to COPUS and its 2 subcommittees. We are also discharging the responsibility of the Secretary General under the space law treaties. So there is a lot of obligations on disseminating information under the treaties, and that is vested with the Office for Outer Space Affairs. And we also serve as secretariats to other dedicated mechanisms and platforms that I have listed here on this slide. When we now look into the capacity building program of the office and how we are building capacities in using space technology and science for sustainable development goals, let us look at the next slide. So the office has quite recently started with developing various dedicated projects that are all really looking with a focused approach on how we are using space technology and how we should develop this further and use space technology for the betterment of planet Earth, sustainable development, and predominantly, of course, meeting the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. One of those projects I just wanted to mention is what you see in the upper corner, Access to Space for All, which is quite an important and unique program where UNOSA, in cooperation with the Japanese Space Agency, is providing the means for developing countries to deploy and operate CubeSats in orbit. So there we have an example of where states are really benefiting by this international cooperation in order to become spacefaring. And we also have a project that is launched only in 2019, Space Law for New Space Actors, which is also an area that is not that common when we deal with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, but really looking into how states should enhance their way in regulating their national space activities, becoming parties to the space treaties, and eventually become also then obviously responsible actors to safeguard the future safety of space operations in orbit. So quite a diverse program where we really look into a variety of topics and issues that are really important for our member state community. Next slide, please. Since the mid-1970s, the Office for Outer Space Affairs is serving as the secretariat for and leading what we label as UN Space. This is an acronym which the mechanism is an interagency mechanism, the interagency meeting on outer space activities and the use of space technology in the United Nations system. And it really encompasses, I would say, majority of UN system entities. And for instance, UNESCO, BSA, FAO, and ESCAP are quite closely related partners within UN space. And as you can see on this slide, over the years, we have a targeted approach on various topics, various matters that are central for our member state community and where we can showcase how the UN system is cooperating and coordinating in the use of space technology. And we are right now preparing the latest report. It's a special report of UN Space on climate action that will be issued for the upcoming session of COPUS in the beginning of June this year. Next slide, please. Some years ago, UNOSA also started an approach where we wanted to build up a platform where governments, intergovernmental organizations, non-governmental organizations, civil society, including non-governmental entities, private sector, academia, could come together and discuss the global governance of outer space activities, discuss certain topics, areas that we are choosing every year, really with a focused approach and in close coordination with our member state community. It's important to note this as a forum where we bring private sector entities closer to a dialogue with governments. The Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space is a full-fledged political intergovernmental body for which the private sector and industry is not part of the deliberations of the committee as such. So this mechanism that we inaugurated some years ago really helps building up confidence and a platform for dialogue among non-governmental and governmental entities. Next slide, please. And this is the last slide I have, just to mention that, of course, the Secretary General's Our Common Agenda is now underpinning a lot of the work we are doing within the office. And we are looking now towards the Summit of the Future, which will be held next year. And as you know, outer space is part of the summit. The open space dialogue is one of the proposed high-level tracks for the summit. So we are looking forward to that event next year. And I wanted lastly to say, why is it important? Well, look at the chart on this slide. We have an increasing number of countries performing and operating satellites in orbit, and we also have an increasing number of space objects being deployed in orbit. And of course, the more we populate our orbits with spacecrafts, of course, the risk for collision raises, and also the risk for fragmentation of satellites, and then they become space debris, which may then lead to uncontrolled re-entry into the atmosphere. So it's all connected, and it's now important to continue the dialogue on the global governance of outer space activities for all actors to really uphold responsible behavior in their national space activities. Thank you very much for your attention. And I also want to thank DISA really for putting together this important dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Niklas. There we see various opportunities for peaceful uses of outer space in variety of areas, and things that are even cross-cutting within our various UN system organizations. So let's proceed to the next presenter, and we talk now to Zahedi. Proceed, please.
Thank you so much, dear moderator. And let me start by thanking all the previous speakers. What an amazing wealth of information and expertise and experience has been unveiled this evening, including by my former colleague Shamila and the many others who are on in this meeting with us today. So really, excellencies, distinguished co-panelists and guests, ladies and gentlemen. First, let me thank UNDESA and the organizers for the opportunity to share a little bit of our work from ESCAP on STI for the SDGs in our session today. I wanted to maybe start by picking up on some of the themes that have been raised by the previous speakers, but with more of a regional or Asia-Pacific focus. I think as many of the speakers have noted today, including ASG Maria Francesca, that the scale and ambition of the SDGs really calls for innovation in every sense of the word, be it new ideas, scientific breakthroughs, technological advancements, or even innovative business models. And fostering innovation, of course, is an explicit focus in one of the goals, Goal 9. But really, it's a key enabler of most, if not all, of the goals. Now, here in Asia Pacific, I guess one of the most innovative regions in the world, I have to say that we are falling short in realizing the potential of STI for the SDGs. And really, as a result of that, our region is not on track actually to achieve any of the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. I mean, let's take a few of the important areas. This is certainly the case for climate action, SDG 13. While innovations and technologies exist to shift brown economies to green economies, our region is currently actually regressing on Goal 13 and far from living up to the aspirations of the Paris Agreement. In fact, instead of reducing emissions, our recent work shows a fast increase of over 30% by 2030 of GHG emissions. And in a region with the highest vulnerability to the impacts of climate change, investment in innovation to adapt and build resilience is not managing to keep pace with the expanding riskscape. I think in our region, we're also falling short when it comes to inequality. The pandemic has, as many of you have seen, quickly turned into a story of the haves and have-nots. And many have been left behind, unable to make a living or afford essential products and services. But the story doesn't finish there. Ensuring that the sort of digital transformation that we've seen during the pandemic and that is happening all around us doesn't become another facet of deep inequalities of the countries in Asia and Pacific is probably one of the big challenges for STI as countries start to rebuild. I know that it's slightly hard for many of us to imagine what life would be like during a pandemic if we didn't have access to the digital world. But sadly, this is an absolute reality for over 2 billion people here in Asia Pacific region, with severe repercussions for children's education, for accessing social support and government services, and for the lives and livelihoods basically of the most vulnerable. And finally, our region is not immune to the sort of the new shocks and the crises, such as that in Ukraine, that are driving up food prices, fertilizer prices, energy prices, cutting off countries from vital remittances, and undermining supply chains and economies. I guess in sum, these crises that we've seen over the past 2 years have revealed really in our region fractured economies in dire need of innovation and a development that is neither inclusive nor sustainable. And I think that is where potentially STI comes into play. We know that fortunately innovation has the potential to very quickly accelerate progress on the SDGs. But the potential of STI for the SDGs cannot be realized in a way unless innovation policy itself is revamped. Certainly in our region, innovation policy is still too often limited to really very narrow economic objectives rather than to addressing the bigger pressing social and environmental challenges of our time, from the climate emergency to indeed leaving no one behind. And our member states, ESCAP's support to member states in a way helps is there to help the countries with a reset to direct STI, but actually towards the SDGs, anchored probably around 3 areas. And as our moderator asked us to talk about maybe our best practices, I think these are the 3 areas that we are picking as possibly what we would consider the entry points for those best practices. And the first one is innovation policy for the SDGs, right? We have worked at both the sub-regional and the national levels to try to help countries to align innovation policies to the SDGs. As an example, at the sub-regional level, in partnership with our sister regional commission, UNECE, we developed the innovation strategy for sustainable development for the UN Special Program for the Economies of Central Asia, or SPECA, the first ever policy of its kind for SPECA member states. Similarly, at the national level, we've worked, for example, with supporting Cambodia, the Cambodian Ministry of Industry, Science, Technology and Innovation, on Cambodia's national policy on science, technology and innovation for sustainable and inclusive development that spans 2020 to 2030. So we need to get that policy piece right, and that's the first entry point that we have. The second is our business innovation work, because in the face of increasing pressure from consumers, from shareholders, and probably from employees, as well as the wake-up call provided by the pandemic, businesses are also realigning their priorities with the broader hopes and aspirations of the SDGs. And here, innovative business models like social enterprises and inclusive businesses are emerging, and a new wave of investors are shifting from investing for profit to investing for impact. And of course, governments are taking note by adopting innovative policies to enable such business innovations and providing the incentives and enabling environments for businesses to go beyond the economic imperative by including social and environmental objectives and offering a vision for really an alternative development model that puts people and planet alongside profit. And here, for example, we as ESCAP have supported the 10 member states of ASEAN to promote inclusive businesses. And the result of this support is that there are now guidelines for the promotion of inclusive business that run across all of ASEAN, endorsed by the ASEAN economic ministers, making ASEAN the very first region in the world to endorse such a set of guidelines. That is, in a way, innovation in practice. Similarly, at the national level, our support to the government of Vietnam has resulted in the adoption by the Prime Minister of the 2022 to 25 program on support for private sector enterprises in sustainable business, which aims to promote inclusive, circular, economy-based and sustainable business models. All of this helps to reorient business and the innovation of business towards the SDGs. Let me just mention a third and final area, which for us is inclusive digital transformation. Because we need to embed inclusive objectives in the 4 core foundations of the digital economy, which is for us the internet access, the digital skills, the digital financing, and of course, e-commerce, if the promise to leave no one behind is actually to be met. To address the digital connectivity divide that we've seen exposed during the pandemic, our Asia-Pacific Information Superhighway initiative focuses on providing affordable broadband access for all. To address the persistent and still expanding digital skills gap, we have been supporting national level strategy, for example, with the Indonesia National Digital Skills Strategy. So getting the digital skills element up to par. On the digital finance side, while the percentage of digital payment users has increased over the recent years, the gap between men and women users actually still persists. And additionally, in East Asia and the Pacific, there is a 1.3 trillion formal financing gap for women-led enterprises. And while the Asia-Pacific region is emerging as a leading force behind in the global e-commerce market, with more than 40% of the global e-commerce transactions, a real great result for innovation, these gains have been led by just a few markets. So how do we level the playing field in our region? And that's what we've been focusing on, especially with a particular emphasis on women. We've responded through our Catalyzing Women's Entrepreneurship project and developed innovative digital financing and e-commerce solutions to support women entrepreneurs who have been hit harder than most during this pandemic. We've supported a range of digital finance and e-commerce solutions through this initiative, and to date, the project has supported over 40,000 women to access financing and leveraged over 64 million in private capital for business. So I guess that goes to answer our esteemed moderator's question on, how are some of these activities impactful? There's certainly room for more, but we are beginning to see impact at scale. So let me wrap up by just saying that these are a few examples of our work in ESCAP on promoting STI for the SDGs with government, with businesses, and with other stakeholders. And over the next year, we're going to continue to promote STI for the SDGs to be able to respond to the multiple and interconnected challenges that are being faced by our member states. I'll just give you one example. Through our Lab to Jab initiative, we're going to be analyzing the entire vaccine value chain, from research and development activities to production and international logistics to vaccine administration. All of this to better prepare countries for future pandemics. Similarly, we're going to continue to promote business innovation for inclusive and sustainable development through a new Green Deal for business in the Asia-Pacific region, providing policy advice to governments to support this green transition for businesses and the promotion of inclusive business across the board, including in food systems. And through our support to the G20 Indonesia presidency, we're going to be working to develop policy recommendations for G20 members to better engage vulnerable groups in the digital economy, bring a much broader benefit of STI. So in closing, again, let me thank the colleagues who have spoken before me today for really the incredible array of initiatives that that we've heard about, and indeed for the collaboration. I know that we've partnered with Unesco on innovative financing, with UNOSA on geospatial information systems, with the Office of the Secretary General's Technology Envoy, and many of our intergovernmental meetings and processes. And of course, it goes without saying, with UNDESA as a close partner across the board. And in the coming year, I hope and I look forward to, and really would appreciate, deeper and much more strategic engagement with all of the UN partners and colleagues who are here with us online. We really look forward to sharing the results and learnings from this work at the next year's STI Forum, and thank you again for this opportunity to share a little bit our experiences on promoting STI for the SDGs. Thank you very much. Back to you.
Oh, thank you, Zahedi. I think that one captures actually even the broad area in terms of innovation policy. We see issues of business innovation for SDGs, inclusive digital technology, and all these areas actually there are opportunities as highlighted, how working together within the UN system. And without much wasting time, let me go to the questions which have been put in the portal. And one of the questions may go to Maria. That is, how can technology development companies get involved with TFM and IATT to contribute expertise toward SDGs? So this is the private sector asking.
Yes, it's a very good question. Well, there are a number of ways in which the UN system is open to learn basically from the private sector, who is innovative and has usually a more dynamic pace than the institutions. So we have, in general, let me illustrate a number of events and opportunities for the private sector to showcase their innovation. For instance, the SDGs Business Forum is an event, annual event, which accompanies the General Assembly in September, basically, and their companies can come and we interact. But then there are ways to do partnership with the UN entities, as we heard from several of our colleagues, and that can be done at the entities level. Before September, in July, we have a high-level political forum, as I was saying, and there, for instance, this year we have planned to have a session with the chief sustainability officers of a number of companies. So there will be a very important, interesting opening on this. But let me say, in another more practical way, if you go on DESA's website, you find that there is a call for inputs towards the preparation of the Global Sustainable Development Report, which I was mentioning before, which is prepared by a group of independent scientists. And so companies can also use that channel. There are many other ways the UN system partners with private companies, but these are just a few examples.
I think that is the only question that, there's another question that has come. No, it has been responded. There's a question which was addressed to FAO, but I've seen it's already responded to. So, Stephanie, unless if there is any other question which may have come to your side.
And maybe Salome, just to reply to the question on the 1,000 digital villages, it is a global initiative, but is led mostly by Asia and the Pacifics. And there is a lot of development. So people could I could send the link or the connection with the person to have more information on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Shamira. I had seen you had responded to the question as asked with the link. There was another question, since you are still around, and could be it's directed to you on the health issues of gene editing.
I think I will leave Ismahan to reply to that on the gene editing. We have something, another collaboration with WHO, which I will be able to respond very quickly. But I leave Ismahan to respond to that first.
Thank you, Shamila. If you want to go ahead first, go ahead, and then I'll reply to the gene editing. If you have another event right after, Shamila, go ahead, please.
Thank you so much, Ismahan. Yes, I guess today is the day for STI events, and we're all surfing between events. But I want to sincerely thank our distinguished speakers. Wonderful to see Kaveh again. All of you, it's really a pleasure to be in this panel with you. And I've also learned much at UNESCO. And I do hope that the intention of this panel and this session is also to foster the collaboration between all of us. Of course, we have not been able to present the breadth and wealth of our activities and initiatives, but this is always a first step. So thank you very much to you and Dessa for bringing us together in here. Thank you to Salome for this exceptional event. Thank you all very much. I just wanted to add two small points, please. The STI policy frameworks that UNESCO is developing with all member states and with all regional economic commissions, with regional entities such as the African Union, are very important, and it builds on statistics and indicators that the UNESCO Institute of Statistics produces. As you're all aware, we have 193 ambassadors to UNESCO and our permanent delegations who sit across the road from us. And they are responsible for statistics and indicators in their countries, science, education, culture, communication. And we gather this information to build on evidence-based policymaking. So we look forward to working with you, and I'm sure we can seek some collaborations with you on that. There are two programs in UNESCO which are global priorities. It's women and Africa. And we also have another priority group, which is small island developing states. So I look at Kaveh also from the Asia Pacific region. We have numerous programs, and we look forward to working with you. I just have one more small point to add, and that is that this is the year of ecosystem restoration and the decade of ecosystem restoration. So we are leading the Human Nature panel, putting forward science, technology, innovation for monitoring biodiversity. So we're calling upon all our partners to join us in these 2,000 heritage sites, biosphere reserves, UNESCO heritage sites, natural heritage sites. Let's expand this to over 6% of Earth so that we can protect more biodiversity for future generations. And we also home to the International Center for Theoretical Physics, where we train physicists to monitor the biodiversity, climate modeling, and also responsible for monitoring the virus and duplication and multiplication of viruses during the pandemic. So this is a breadth of different programs that the International Center for Theoretical Physics manages, where we train over 6,000 scientists, physicists on a yearly basis based in Trieste. The center was set up by Abdus Salam, a previous Nobel laureate. We have extensive programs in Trieste, like the World Academy of Sciences, and I'm sure we can look to extensive collaborations with all of you. I have one question for Niklas. Is there possibility to include outer space under the heritage of humanity? After all, who benefits from the geological heritage of outer space? Will it be just a few who has access to outer space, or can we open this up to 193 member states of the world? Every voice counts. So can we create space heritage under humanity? I think this is really critical if we want science for a peaceful world. I'm really sorry, I need to go to another event. My colleagues will be with you. I'll have to leave in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I just need to respond to you. That's actually really one of the core questions that are being debated, currently. How to create, and whether there should be creation of historical and heritage site, particularly on the moon. You see, so that is a debate that is going on in our committee and elsewhere. And I know we should actually reach out and work together and look into this, I think, because this is really an important topic that is coming closer and closer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. So Salome, from my side, I didn't see the question because I'm on the phone, sorry. But for the gene editing, it's a Nobel Prize technology. It's very promising. but it's a little bit unknown for particularly the countries in the South. So the idea of the paper is to bring a number of eminent scientists to do a proper research on the technologies, its potential, its risk, its unintended consequences, and the adoption, the scalability possibility, the applications. So it's a paper that's going to be launched in June, combined with the discussion during the Science and Innovation Days, to look at how could we use it and use it safely to really end hunger and malnutrition. So it's in terms of technology, it's a very potent technology. So we don't need any more to bring a gene or to bring a sequence of DNA from a species to a species, or not even within the same species, but we can rather do the mutation at a nucleotide level. So we could eventually go in the area that we know very well and change it. And the application are for all purposes, be it for agriculture, human health, you name it, for environmental purposes and so on and so forth. And maybe while I have the mic, Salome, I want to just add up to what Shamila said, that really science has no borders. Science has no borders in terms of countries or organization or whatsoever. So we need really to push for more science as UN organization as well. And as the chief scientist of FAO, I have started putting together a chief scientist group, namely with Saumia, Dr. Saumia, the chief scientist of WHO, with Andrea, the chief scientist of UNEP, but we want to bring in more. We want to really, as 3 women, and I'm very glad we have much more women here in this panel, come together around the potential of science and technology and innovation to end hunger and malnutrition and fix the planet. So I hope that many of the colleagues here will come with us. We are still in the beginning of how to bring chief scientists and maybe heads of science in the UN organization to join forces and work together towards using more science, technology, and innovation, and bring it very strongly to the public and to policymakers. Over to you, Salome. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, colleagues, we are going beyond time, but before I put maybe my last words, I would like also to say, as a moderator working at the Inter-University Council for East Africa, this is a body at the East Africa community, and we are also very open to partnership programs that are touching, the unit that deals with research and innovation. And these are programs that can learn across the East Africa community institutions within the community. So we are open to partnership programs on science, technology, and innovations. So I think with that, I would say this session was very good. It's an eye-opener to everyone, knowing what is happening in each institution and how we can actually collaborate further. There is a lot of networking that are brand, and also this is a good opportunity also to broaden various areas which we are doing and working together. And with that, I add my remarks. Over to you, Stephanie, and Secretariat. Thank you, team.
Thank you very much, and the session is now closed.